We get accusations like this all the time.
Who needs brains? They never did a girl any good.
I'm so sorry I didn't go with her. You gotta let it go.
So Emerald, I was reading over the weekend and there was an interview in which you said frightening women are often male characters with boobs, like that's the way they're written. I was wondering sort of if you can elaborate on that a little bit more. I would love to see personally more diversity in the frightening human space, both in terms of gender, in terms of experience, you know, all of that. And I thought this movie did a great job.
Thank you so much. I think, yeah, it just kind of struck me that female rage is something that we all find, you know, culturally very problematic, very unpleasant. It's not something people want to look at. It's sort of almost freakish for women to be angry, whereas for men it's sort of rewarded as, you know, there are plenty of movies like this where men go on sort of revenge journeys. And so I guess I wanted to sort of like re-examine the female-led revenge movie and put a real woman, you know, at the center of it and have her rage manifest itself in a way that I think feels more inherently female to me, in that it's sort of intricately planned. It's much more existential, psychological. It's, you know, she's using her means rather than her kind of brawn. Yeah, and I guess that always feels interesting to me. Things always feel more immediate and more frightening and more complicated when they feel like, oof, it's something you kind of feasibly could do. I think that's when Cassie and Carey's amazing performance is just so brilliant at illustrating it. She's, you know, she's often scared of herself, you know, and that's kind of, it's such an interesting, I think we've all been there, and it's an interesting thing to see.
Speaking of that, I was going to say, Carey, Cassie is frightening, but she's also sympathetic, which is something that, you know, we don't always get with our women on the brink. Like they're, you know, they might just be out there. Can you talk about sort of walking that tightrope on screen and sort of like, you know, saying this could be any of us, really?
Yeah. And I, you know, I really feel that, you know, it's so much a testament to the writing that she walks that line. I feel she's absolutely grounded in truth. Her story, you know, the events that lead her to this point, and that truth has kind of built this real anger in her, and this sense of injustice that just can't be sated when people refuse to accept their role in things. So it does walk a sort of, there is a sort of bit of a tightrope there. But I also really, I like, it was so great to play out the truth of all the situations that she finds herself in, that there's no sort of sassy moment that doesn't have the true kind of result afterwards. So for instance, the sort of car wrecking moment, you know, is all very gratifying in the moment, but you also see the after effect of that, of somebody shaking and kind of unsure of what they're capable of and kind of terrified they're going to get arrested, and you know, those are the things that you never see in these kind of films because they're sort of washed over, and what Emerald's always come back to in the screenplay is the truth of the situation. The truth, it's never just, there's nothing is done sort of frivolously in this. It's all based in, you know, an actual truthful journey.
There's a moment in the movie where people are sort of saying, you know, things are so different. You know, that was 7 years ago. Things are different now. And I know the movie is not necessarily set in any sort of, like, it could be 1993, it could be 2020. I totally drove that car that Cassie drives at some point in my life. A very reliable car. Do you guys think, I mean, Carey, maybe you can take this one, but like, how much have things changed? Do you know what I mean? Like, there are still parts of this where I'm like, oh, this is a very nice guy. Like, you could look at these guys that they're dating and be like, do we know the past of all of these people that we know in our lives today?
Yeah, I mean, it feels like a huge amount has changed and a huge amount, and at the same time it hasn't. You know, it's so much of this is stuff that was totally normal for us growing up, and so a part of the experience of, you know, me and my friends who went to university. I didn't go, but, you know, a lot of my friends who went to university, and you know, and I think now, you know, a lot of that kind of stuff in retrospect is kind of you know, it has been totally reframed, but I think, you know, but at the same time, it all feels very contemporary to me. It all feels very current. It all feels like, you know, the shift hasn't really happened yet, because these things these are conversations that have been going on for millennia. So it's not something that can happen over a couple of years, but it's certainly films like this that further the conversation that I think, will be a part of it. We've been so informed by our culture, coming into this period. I think it'll be, part of it will be culture that will bring us out of it.
Emerald, there's a music placement in this movie, Stars Are Blind by Paris Hilton, which is also intriguing in some sense because she doesn't maybe get as much credit as she should be for being as smart as she is. I don't know if you watched the documentary. Fascinating stuff. Like it's pretty meta. So, I know that song was kind of in there from the get. Why Stars Are Blind, and how did that come to be?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's everything that you say. I think, again, like, there are lots of women, whose songs are used in the soundtrack who I think maybe haven't been taken seriously, have maybe survived things, made the best out of things that were difficult, and for me, Stars Are Blind is just such a legitimately brilliant song. And, just from a kind of plot point of view, I had to think about what would be the song that if a guy knew every word to it, I'd fall in love with him. And I think this would be it. It would be this song. It would never be like, I'm just trying to think of something kind of incredibly esoteric. I don't know. It wouldn't be sort of some like deep cut of, I was going to say the Goo Goo Dolls, but actually, if anyone knew a Goo Goo Dolls, deep ticket to my heart. I can't think of any bands, but it's just about kind of taking stuff seriously, taking clothes seriously, taking nails seriously, taking pop culture seriously, things that are kind of the preserve of women are kind of made silly by our culture. They're belittled by our culture. They're not silly, and they're not small either. And so part of this is about kind of, it's partly that Cassie uses this stuff, uses those preconceptions to kind of hide in plain sight, but it's also because I love them, and I think that they're all brilliant, and I'm delighted to have them in the film.
It's a day of reckoning for everyone.